Welcome to Fiery Discourse, your podcast and media featuring dragonesses, female dinosaurs, and other similar saurians and scalies. I'm your host, Ludmillanon, and with me are my co-hosts, Angron, Mathmachine and The Shark. Today is our 173rd episode, and we're discussing the 2025 Beginning of the End episode, Meeting the King, to continue our second ever Isekai Month. So, let's get things started.
How many times must we teach you this lesson, old lady? Wait.
Hey kids, you like depression?
Yep, that also is going to come in handy in this episode. Beginning After the End began as a webcomic released in 2018, and it got an anime adaptation in 2025. Now, Beginning After the End is about Peter Graves fighting off giant killer grasshoppers after they eat a food additive, and... Oh no, wait, I'm sorry. That's the wrong Beginning After the End. My mistake. The Beginning After the End we're talking about is about a man, King Gray, dying mysteriously and being brought back in another world, taking the name Arthur. And no, he is not Arthur the Aardvark, so we will never know if he will ever learn if having fun isn't hard when you've got a library card.
And to add further insult to injury, no, he doesn't have a perm, no, he doesn't have glasses, and no, unfortunately, he, to my knowledge, does not meet a fiery death at the hands of a dragon that we know of.
This Arthur is instead the son of two adventurers, as he is determined to do his life right this time. The episode begins with a shot of the ocean as two shadowy figures talk. The younger of the two figures talks about how she found something beautiful and how she expects to never see anything like it again, as the older one asks if something wicked is on its way. The younger of the two says yes to this, as we cut to what appears to be a gigantic suit of armor, as Arthur is shocked at the sight of this. We then get to the opening of the show, which is set to King's Blood by the band Kala. It begins on a rainy sky before cutting to Arthur standing in the middle of a city, looking up at the sky with a confused expression and his mouth open. We then cut to a tree in the fall, then to Arthur sitting in a house, staring into space with an open mouth expression yet again. We then see the original version of Arthur, King Gray, pull out his sword before cutting to Arthur also pulling out his sword, on the opposite side of King Gray. We cut to a shot of King Gray standing triumphant before an army, before we then cut to Arthur reaching up to him. After some battle sequences, we then see Arthur posing with his sword, then an explosion. We then get various multicolored shots of other characters from this series. We then get various landscape shots before cutting to Arthur running along, before we see a man in armor roaring. Arthur then leaps into the sky, followed by shots of all of the other characters, as you then see an adult Arthur with a mask before taking it off. After slowly zooming into the title card, the opening ends with a shot of the planet in grayscale.
Yeah, two things about this intro. The first, the opening sounds like a Japanese version of Evanescence, which, if you listen to two of their songs, this song and one of their songs side by side, you can definitely understand what I mean by that. The second, yeah, this pretty much gives you everything you need to know about this series. Also, this song is another one that, while not completely done in English, the vast majority of it is done in English, which is the second time we've had a song in an anime opening use English. So we are on quite the interesting streak, as it were, with these kinds of openings.
If you haven't heard this song before, I do recommend listening to it. It's up on YouTube. It is, in my opinion, one of the best songs that was used for an anime opening in 2025.
Sweet.
I can definitely see why, because it sounds so different compared to a lot of the other isekai themes you've talked about on the podcast so far. It's really unique, and I like where they go with it. After the intro, we then cut to Arthur staring at the statue as his internal monologue asks what he is doing there. Now, one thing that actually surprised me, and I really liked it, Arthur's internal monologue is actually that of King Gray. It's a really great touch, because it shows that although Arthur appears to be a small child, he still has his adult mind, which is something really creative. I like when they do that.
I know it's not like the same thing, or like they definitely didn't go this way, but honestly, the way these characters, or the way this character has like two minds in one body, kind of reminds me of Yu-Gi-Oh! With, both Yugis sharing the same body.
Yeah, I feel you there. Anyways, Math?
Well, it's not actually two minds in one body. It's literally the idea of he retains his old mind and old memories as he is transported into this new body in this new world.
Yeah, it's a form of reincarnation, as if you will.
He talks about what the most pressing issue is before the giant then moves a claw, causing Arthur to leap up to her. He is then knocked away by it as the giant says in a distorted feminine voice that he has much to learn and that she is still on his side. Arthur is confused at this as she walks over to a series of strange glowing fruits growing nearby and picks them. She drops several of them by him, saying how he must be hungry and, even if he isn't, he should eat something to regain his strength. Arthur attempts to talk to her, but still hurts over what happened. He then starts crying as the figure tells him that he could have hurt himself and it's best not to press his luck. He asks how, before he then starts to eat the fruit as, in a really cute gag, she reminds him to chew while eating. After he's finished with a few fruit pieces, he asks the figure if his parents survived. The figure says that she cannot move, but she can see further than he thinks, then opens up a portal. As you see a battlefield littered with bodies, the figure remarks that his parents escaped a few days ago. As Arthur realizes that his parents are alive, he begins to cry over this, happy that they're still alive. His adult voice also notes that he is relieved, as he thanks the figure for showing him this. He says that he's grateful to the figure, as the figure then says that her name is Sylvia, and sadly, she is not Sylvia from Wander Over Yonder, because then she would get a perfect score, and let's just say the fate that happened to her definitely would have not happened with Sylvia. We then cut back to the ocean with the two shadowy figures, as the younger one asks the older one what to do. The older one says that the younger one already knows, as the younger one remarks how she won't be able to keep any secrets. We then fade to black and cut back to Arthur as his King Grey form continues to narrate. As he continued to eat the fruit and live with Sylvia, the narration says that he grew stronger every day. One thing to point out here, the background music in this sequence sounds like such a ripoff of the Shire theme from Lord of the Rings. It's not one of those, oh, it's a little bit similar, oh, it's trying to imitate it. It is almost a direct one-to-one copy of that music that it actually really surprised me.
The person that is in charge of the webcomic and overall story for this was inspired by, among several other things, Lord of the Rings. So I'm pretty sure there was a little bit of, hey, could you do this when the anime was being made?
True. Go ahead, Angron.
Yeah, I mean, I could sort of hear it when I was doing it, but I mean, it wasn't too one-to-one for the most part.
True, you're right. Maybe it's just me hearing it. As we get a shot of him slumbering, Sylvia watches over him, as Gray narrates how he wants to get home as soon as possible, but found that it would take longer than he thought. As we see a map of the world, Arthur currently says that they are on the edge of the forest of Elshire, where both beasts and bandits roam, as King Gray says he was certain Sylvia had ways of circumventing these threats. After we see shots of both the aforementioned beasts and bandits, we then see Arthur sitting in front of Sylvia, as she notes how he wants to go home, but making a breach in space and time requires a lot of effort and preparation. As Arthur plays with a stick, pretending that it is a sword, Sylvia notes how good it is to see him jumping around and being active. King Gray, meanwhile, narrates that Sylvia never spoke of herself, as the sight of her was enough to make Arthur freeze in shock, as we then get to a flashback of that sequence. We are about 5 minutes into the episode, and we're already getting flashbacks of things we already saw. It's kind of like a joke in that one Leslie Nielsen movie, Spy Hard, where Leslie and one of the other spies are there. Oh, we had great times, didn't we? Yep, we sure did. And then it flashbacks to literally 5 seconds ago. That's kind of like what it feels like here.
Yeah, there's unfortunately a little bit of backstory with the production of this anime. This was produced by 3 different studios, all doing individual different things, and they already had a small budget to begin with. So when you try and distribute that between 3 studios, you're kind of left with shit like this, unfortunately.
There is a reason why anime tends to have this infamy of using, filler or use footage a lot.
Yeah, and it's not like 3 studios can't exactly work together. Like, I mean, there are dozens of examples of studios working together that I can't entirely think of off the top of my head. Like, perhaps Netflix, Universal, and DreamWorks off the top of my head. But yeah, when it comes to anime, very far and few between examples of a collaboration on that scale really exists.
Yeah, I can kind of see why. Because again, you can tell that they had to cut some corners for this show, especially with how they used a lot of flashbacks. And it's kind of a shame because otherwise the show is animated well, the designs are excellent, and the story is really well done. It's just one of those things that sadly is a tiny bit of a knock against it. Thankfully, it's not a large one, but it's still pretty noticeable. King Gray wonders if she was injured in battle, hence the armor, but then says how, despite her frightening appearance, he found her to be kind, gentle, and warm. We then cut to Arthur standing there and panting, before he then leaps in the air and lands on a series of rocks. The middle rock begins glowing as he begins meditating on it. Sylvia is surprised at this, that he already developed a mana core at such a young age. She then asks him if he can do this, as she makes a rainbow light ball appear in her hand, asking him if he knows what she's doing. He is surprised to see that she is both gathering magic and restoring mana at the same time. King Gray notes how it's like refueling a plane in midair, and how he didn't think such a thing was possible. As Sylvia notes how humans have very limited ideas of what mana is and how to gather and use it, she explains how non-humans have it easier. She explains how mana beasts do it as easy as breathing, then asks Arthur if he wants to learn how to do it. After he says yes, she then asks him what he would do with the knowledge after he obtains it. Arthur is confused as Sylvia continues by saying that he will be much more powerful when he learns the skill, and asks what he plans on doing with the strength. King Gray thinks of this, as you then get flashbacks to previous episodes before he growls. Both Arthur and Gray's voice says that any who seek to deprive me of what I care about shall be killed. Sylvia's reaction to this is literally just to flick him away, as Arthur wonders why she did that. She matter-of-factly states that he failed, as she refuses to teach anyone with such a wicked look on their face. Now what's going to happen is Arthur's going to have to go to goodness lesson number 2, where he sees a man struggling with heavy packages.
Yeah, this scene right here is literally the equivalent of taking a rolled up newspaper and bapping it on a dog's head for chewing up a bird carcass. That is honestly the mental image I have from seeing that.
Not wrong.
Yeah.
Arthur yells back at her that isn't killing what others do, as King Gray says that is how he became a powerful king. As we then see a flashback of it, Sylvia says that his thoughts are only of killing enemies, and then asks him if he deprives enjoyment from that. She then asks if she hit him too hard, as he says that he is okay, which I like that. Sylvia is such a well-written character. She's not just a one-note helper or a one-note antagonist. They give her so much depth, which, slight spoiler warning, makes what happens to her all the sadder.
Yeah, when it comes to mentor figures, you either get mentors who are definitely a little eccentric but mean well, or you get those who are gruff and don't exactly have the fullest of good intentions. But here we get the best of both worlds, because we have someone who has experience and knows when to be gruff and when to be tenderly, like, say, a parent would. Keep that in mind, because it's definitely going to be coming out a lot throughout this episode.
Sylvia then points out that her hands could either tear him to shreds, but they could also be gentle and soft, as Arthur is confused at this. She then asks him which one he prefers, as he says that he prefers her hands to be gentle. Sylvia agrees, lecturing him about how violence and hatred is wrong, and how she doesn't want him using the power for something like that. King Gray is shocked because she seems to know that King Gray exists as well as Arthur. As he wonders how, we then get a shot of Sylvia lifting up a finger, which I normally wouldn't point out something like this, except for this. This is done in CGI that for 2025, a show that was made less than a year ago. I'm sorry, I don't know if it is an excuse looking like this. I mean, granted, I'm sure they had a very low budget. I'm sure they had a very limited budget, but even with taking all that into consideration, this is kind of a wonky effect right here.
Yeah, honestly, compared to Arafume, this is a little more polished. Definitely more cohesive compared to Arafureta. But yeah, even I gotta admit that this isn't exactly the most impressive when it comes to what Japan can do with CG.
And basically the same, like, yeah, it looks odd, but honestly, it's not Arifureta levels of looking off.
Yeah.
She then asks him the question again as we get to more flashbacks of Arthur's life, set to dramatic music. He then answers that he will protect those that he cares about, as Sylvia notes that that is the right answer, obviously taking cues from the professor guy from the movie I, Robot. After getting a zoom in on her armor, we then cut to outside where a male figure wearing similar armor notes that Sylvia is there. He then takes off to the sky after unfurling his wings, revealing that he is a dragon. We then see another dragon dead, presumably having been killed by the male, which also means that Sylvia is a dragoness, and we won't talk about her appearance just yet, at least in the armor form, because it's kind of hard to tell what she is, hence why we've mostly been calling her the figure from here on in, aside from some slightly scaly hands. But don't worry, this is not the only portion we see of her, as we'll get to in a little bit. We then cut back to a grayscale castle, as two servants then bow before King Gray, with this being a flashback of the king's life. I really do like this, that we actually get to see what King Gray's life was like before he was sent to this other world. It's something that, again, it gives him a lot of backstory, and I'm glad that they did that, because otherwise, I don't think this would have worked as good. If they kept King Gray more vague, doing it like this really improves it, in my opinion.
Indeed. It's not exactly like something would compare to Shawshank Redemption, where like it would be a little better if we didn't know the origin of the main character. Adding a little bit of character definitely helps to understand what Gray's life was like before reincarnating in this new world.
Also, this is quite unique because this might be the first isekai covered where the original life was not like modern times, like it was not a student from the present getting transported to a fantasy world. It was already a king in a castle, basically.
Yep, I do like that. Yep, I have to agree with you there.
Two things to note real quick. First, the world that King Gray comes from is actually Earth. It's this kind of weird sci-fi, not apocalyptic, but it's the sci-fi future, and we've devolved back into feudal states. So that's why he's a king, because he's a great conqueror and can get them land and riches and all that kind of shit. But second, as far as what they do with Gray into Arthur, this is something of a common thing that was in early isekai, where they would show the origin of the person that was getting isekai'd, and it was sort of a build them back up to be a better person because they were kind of a shit stain in the original world. Jobless reincarnation is the big one for this. What they do with this series, though, is they aren't trying to make Arthur a better person. They're trying to give Arthur a chance to be a person this time, because as King Gray, he was just a warring soldier, and that's all that he was good for. He never had a personality. He never had a life. He was just soldier 24/7. So that's why all of this feels so impactful to him, because he's never had these emotions and connections before.
Oh, and it's easy to see why, because again, just like you said, that is such a creative take on isekai as a whole, as a genre. I have to give them all the credit for that. King Gray then arrives in a room, startling his advisor as he then begins staring at a portrait. He laments how he is king in name only, due to Parliament holding all the real power, the birth rates are declining, and all of the resources running dry. King Gray is good and all, but things would have gone way better for him if instead he was a football-playing king in space with a mustache. He's already got 2 out of the 4 down. He then says that the role of the king was to act as an agent of war and little more. The advisor says that he is the greatest king they have ever seen with his battle victories, and how he has brought the lands the wealth and prosperity they deserve. Which I have to say, he's not the greatest king, because he's not King DDD.
Yep.
Nice.
Especially the Forgotten Land version.
The advisor asks why he is there, as King Gray yells that he has had enough and storms out of the room. We then see shots of a shattered crown and his sword on the floor before the flashback ends. We then cut back to Arthur trying to hone his power, as Sylvia encourages him to continue, as his ability to perform magic will greatly expand. King Gray tells Arthur to preserve the mana as we fade to black. When we fade back in, we see a flashback of King Gray confronting a giant knight, as he remarks how, in order to continue winning, he needed to have control over Ki, as he then slices the knight in half. We then cut back to Arthur and Sylvia, as the boy finally manages to get control of his power, with King Gray exclaiming, "Victory!" Sylvia then begins to praise him, before she then notices something. She then flies into Arthur, using her powers to hide him, as he asks her what she's doing before she tells him to be quiet. The male dragon from earlier arrives, as he says that it doesn't look like Sylvia, but it feels like she's there. She asks how he found her, as he says that it was through blood, then tells her to come with him. Sylvia refuses, as the male dragon then says how he hopes violence wasn't necessary, then blasts her with energy. Arthur is horrified at this, but Sylvia tells him not to worry for her. The male dragon continues by saying that if she pushes herself too hard, you will shorten the precious time you have left, as Sylvia retorts by saying, I can say the same thing about you. The dragoness then finally manages to burst out of her armor, revealing her true form. Sylvia is a white-scaled dragoness with orange markings all over her body, much like last week's subject, Crush Lulu. Her appearance here is a lot more like a typical dragon compared to Crush Lulu and some of the others. She looks, to me, very much like the typical medieval dragoness in a way that really does work. You could tell that she just radiates wisdom from the very core of her being, and they do this kind of cool effect where she has a bit of a glow effect around her.
Her armor design in particular reminded me a lot of two Yu-Gi-Oh cards, one dark black armor and giant, the other what I've shown to you all already. Here, however, this is honestly quite the metamorphosis. This design, while not as unique as other dragonesses we've covered, is quite the stunning look to behold. Even further capped by the fact that she still talks in telepathy. So, major props there, show, for uniqueness in abilities and character, and even if it's less so in design. Still cool, though.
Wait a minute. White dragoness that communicates with telepathy and is kinda motherly, well, in this case, grandmotherly. Hello, Lady Nora from Two Kinds. All she needs is just the perverted side, and it's literally her.
Indeed.
Well, we'll definitely get to that one sooner than later, too, and it'll be fun to compare and contrast them when we finally do get to that. Arthur is then surprised at her appearance, as Sylvia then breathes energy onto the male dragon, causing him to be knocked backwards. He is shocked at her for using this, as he mentions she knows what will happen if she does use it. Sylvia retorts that she's been happy long enough, and mentions how she wishes it lasted longer. The male dragon is knocked back by this, before then making another attack of his own. After he manages to pummel Sylvia some more, and fires another blast at her, the dragoness freezes time, which is done in a really cool black and white effect. I don't think I've ever seen anything like that be used before, but it gives it almost kind of a video game vibe to it, and that just points to originality right there. She tells Arthur to come forward as he asks if she did this. She says yes, as Arthur then asks if she is a dragon. After confirming it, she then asks Arthur, do I look like a Sylvia? No, you need to be bluer and a bit thicker and have a red head fronds to be a Sylvia, but you're pretty close, not gonna lie, you're pretty close there.
I mean, she's got the semi-bipedal look down. If she was still on 2 legs instead of 4 legs, she would get more points in that category. But yeah, I don't really think she'd be a Sylvia. At least not our Sylvia anyways.
She then tells the boy that there isn't much time, and she unfurls her wings as a rainbow glow appears. She then apologizes to Arthur, and tells him that she has given him everything he needs to survive. She then asks him what he promised, as he remembers that he told her that he will protect others. She then rubs him with her snout, which ends up causing the same orange markings to appear on his body, which is something that I definitely was not expecting. So I guess this means, again, someone who has not seen the rest of the show, I guess this means that Arthur has some kind of a dragon-based powers in the future.
That's honestly what I got from that as well, because she wouldn't exactly be giving him something like that if she didn't know that there'd be something down the line that he'd need them for. But still great of him to do that. Also, it looks adorable while she's doing it.
So, as someone that has watched the whole season and will be watching season 2, currently airing as of the time of the recording of this episode, go watch it. It's good. He is given not dragon powers per se, but more energy and ability to channel that from the dragon, because also the egg that he was given, if you remember the blue ocean with the younger voice, that's the egg. That is Sylvia's daughter, Sylvie, and the two of them have become what's called like a monster bonding thing. So they are connected mentally, and we see plenty of her throughout the show, so get ready for us to talk about her in the future.
So we'll probably do this for Isekai Month next year then, so we'll see about
yeah.
that. As he wonders what's going to happen, she tells him that everything will be revealed in time and now they must part. Sylvia then admits that she could have sent him home anytime she wanted, but she stalled for time. Arthur asks why, as she admits that she enjoyed having him there, but didn't want him to leave. Arthur begins crying, saying how even with all of his powers, he's not sure that he could save her, and after all she taught him, he can't stand the idea of that happening. She tells him that this was inevitable and nothing can change his fate. King Gray notes how he was shocked how natural the next words that came out of him was, and wonders if their time together changed him, as we then get more flashbacks of the episode. This is a little more justifiable than the flashbacks earlier because this is trying to get the point across of Sylvia and Arthur's relationship. I understand why this series of flashbacks are here, so for that reason, I'm not as annoyed as I was with the earlier one, let's say.
Yeah, I can understand why. If you're jumping into this series at this episode specifically, having those flashbacks there definitely helps people get caught up with what's going on and are not exactly going to be as confused or as taken back as they were with stuff like Arifureta. Props to that, and props to this moment being amazing as well, and also being a little more fitting.
Arthur then says that he can't leave her, as she's family to him. Sylvia says that Arthur already has a mother, as he then calls her his grandmother. Dramatic music begins to play, as Sylvia's eyes widen over this, as Arthur then asks her what's wrong. She asks him to say it again, as he then calls her his grandmother, with her beginning to cry over this. Sylvia thanks him for the gift he has given her, calling her my child. As Arthur takes his things and prepares to go through the portal, he turns back and says he can't do it, calling out for Sylvia before the portal then ends up closing. This actually really shocked me because, again, went into this episode kind of completely blind, not knowing really anything about this series. This just shocked me with what they were doing with it, because I'm not gonna lie, this actually tugged at my heartstrings a little bit. I actually teared up a little bit while watching this episode, especially during this sequence, because yeah, they really go places with this, unfortunately.
First off, kudos to the voice actors for really selling this scene. They do a fantastic job relaying all the subtle emotions that are going on in this. And second, this is what this anime really excels at, just these emotional gut punch moments. You can say what you want about the animation and the quality of the studio. Unfortunately, they did keep the story, the raw emotional impact that this series has, and they do a really fantastic job translating that.
Oh, obviously, like I say, this would not be nearly as impactful if the dub wasn't as good as it was, to which I have to say this. This dub is really professional. I am so impressed by this.
No joke. In this one episode, we get to know this character, what she's like, what she has in store for Arthur, and honestly, it worked. In this one episode, Arthur bonds with this character greatly, and we feel she ultimately has to go. Like, it's just that one emotional high that where you get to know something amazing, you get to witness it, it's wonderful, and then in an instant, it's just gone, just like that, and it feels rough when it happens. While it's not as strong as other moments, I do personally admit that it's one of those things where it's justifiable to be emotional at this sort of thing.
This moment is really just so shocking, what happens, because after Arthur leaves, time starts up again, as Sylvia is instantly heavily wounded by the male dragon's attack. One thing to point out, we never see what this male dragon looks like outside of the armor, which really makes you wonder just what this guy looks like. As the male approaches her, he then wonders if it was a lethal blow, before she then opens her eyes, saying that he's close enough. She then sits up and blasts him directly in the face with an attack so powerful, we cut to the exterior of the mountain to see the impact. This actually is the last we see of her, because whatever this attack was, it presumably killed her off. This is the first and only episode we get of Sylvia, and I'm honestly kind of surprised because the way they hyped her up around the end, I would come to the assumption that she actually would have survived somehow, but at the same time, for the story they're trying to tell with her, with grief and passing on and nothing lasts forever, it does make sense, Obviously, for the purposes of this podcast, we would have liked if she lived, but that's not the story they were trying to tell, which really makes me wonder how we're going to get to that when we eventually get to Land Before Time, which that'll come sometime in the future, but
Yeah, a little more dragonic accurate is when we get the Dragon Prince, and oh boy, that's gonna be rough when we have to talk about that killer thing.
we then cut back to the ocean, and the two shadowy figures, as the older one tells the younger if that was enough, as the younger agrees. However, the older figure then tells the younger that the rest is up to her. We then cut to Arthur, floating in the portal as Sylvia's voice appears to him. She asks him if he remembers what she told him, as he says yes. And this void is pretty much just a bunch of multicolored lights and glows, and at least he's not gonna go someplace where he could be all
Yeah, and at least it's not the Flying Dutchman's Tunnel of Horrors either.
But getting back to a more serious thing, he says that he won't forget, as she says that he will be alright. Arthur notes how sad he is over everything, as Sylvia explains how they are like mirrors, reflecting the sorrow of the world around them, and they must transform that sorrow into joy. Arthur says that he can't do it, as Sylvia says that step by step he will, as he is the strongest king. She then reminds him to not let hatred fill his heart, as he slowly drifts through the portal. And in an interesting touch, she actually calls him King Grey here, which surmises that she knew all along who he really was, which that's a really cool twist, and I do like that.
Yeah, that's definitely one of those twists that was very much appreciated because it shows that she wasn't just completely oblivious to who or what Arthur was. She knows what his deal is, and she's not only preparing Arthur for utilizing mana in a way that few others could really use it, making him all the more powerful, preparing Grey for a world that is not exactly going to be as welcoming to someone like Grey was in his old life. And for that, I very much appreciate Sylvia as a character because she's in many ways the true mentor that really helps him prepare for what's to come and what kind of new person he's supposed to be, or at least is going to choose to be.
That is very, very true there. Very well said. Arthur then wonders about this, as King Grey can't help but think of Sylvia as somebody from his past, as everything goes white. We then cut to Arthur laying in a field and waking up, as he vows to Sylvia that he will try to help her and make her proud no matter what. The episode ends with rustling happening in the bushes, as Arthur turns around to see what it is, but of course, we don't get to see what it is.
I listen to the next episode.
Yep, obviously.
It was probably a zigzagoon in the bushes.
Nice.
The ending begins with a time-lapse shot of Arthur going from an infant to a young man, then various shots of other characters, including Sylvia, interestingly enough. As he goes from a young man to an adult, he then begins to run, which is occasionally interspliced with a shot of his mask on the ground. The credits and the show as a whole ends with another shot of his mask on the ground, and the beginning after the end is still going on, both in webcomic and anime form. I liked it, but I think what happened with Sylvia really surprised me in a good way. I'm not saying in a bad way, like with what happened a couple of weeks ago, but this shocked me, I think, in a good way, in that I wasn't expecting this kind of show to follow on those kinds of themes, as you mentioned a couple of minutes ago. They do such a fantastic job of this that I'm actually interested in seeing more of it. We are definitely going to be talking about Sylvie later on, which is, overall, I am really surprised at how much I enjoyed this show. It's not my favorite of Isekai Month so far. I think I liked Overlord and I've Been Killing Slimes for 300 years and became a mixed up zombie better. Overall, I thought this still was really good and another great addition to Isekai Month. So I really, really liked this.
Yeah, I agree. It's one of those series that isn't as edgy as something like Arifureta and doesn't always have the comedic angle that something like Overlord does, but it's one of those things that definitely feels a lot more somber the more you get to know it. And I'm sure going forward, it's probably going to get a little less somber and a little more obvious when it comes to isekai tropes, but for an isekai like this, it's definitely got a unique premise, and it got me a little interested in what it's going to look like going forward.
But Now it is time for the question of the week, which is, what is your favorite grandmother character? Now this doesn't just mean a character that is a grandmother, because that could be a little bit restrictive. We're also going to be talking about characters who have grandmother energy, basically. Characters who are maternal, but more so, if that makes sense. I'll go first, and I actually have two choices here. One of them silly, one of them slightly less silly. We'll start with the silly choice, because that's one I definitely want to get out of the way. And that is going to be SpongeBob's grandmother. Mostly because the episode where she premieres in Grandma's Cookies is an absolutely hilarious one. That is the SpongeBob episode that gave us, now you must acquire a taste for freeform jazz. And it actually has a good message too, with SpongeBob learning that you can still love your grandma and like cookies, and you still can be an adult at the same time, and no one can make fun of you, even though the Krusty Krab patrons still laugh at him at the end. It's a really well done episode, and it's definitely a highlight of the first 3 seasons for a reason. So that's going to be my silly choice. My more serious choice for the best grandmother character, the grandmother from the film The Witches. This is a 1990 film done by Jim Henson with great special effects. Basically, the grandmother in The Witches is one of these wise protector roles that is really such an amazing actress. The actress who played her actually wasn't really that much of an actress. She actually was more of a Swedish film director. For someone who never really acted, she does such a fantastic job in the role. And the 1990 movie overall, it's not a perfect movie. There is a lot of things wrong with it, but that character is not one of them, because she takes no shit from any of these witches. She knows all about them. She's incredibly proactive and trying to help and all that. And yeah, overall, she has such a fantastic character to where, yeah, she's going to be my choice for the more serious grandmother role, because the actress who plays her does such a fantastic job. And I have not seen the 2020 version, so I can't talk about that. But everything I've seen of that version does not seem as good. So, yeah.
I mean, it's still got some good stuff about it. The grandma there is pretty good as well, so take solace in that fact, and it's got an interesting sort of twist to the whole thing that I definitely think you should check out at least once, but yeah, you're not too far off.
But yeah, that's going to be my pick. It's going to be Grandma Squarepants, who also gets great moments in some other episodes, like the episode with Blackjack. That has some really funny moments. Her SpongeBob thinks a gingerbread cookie is her soul. Also, the SpongeBob comics has a really sweet comic where Squidward and SpongeBob go over to her house, and Squidward ends up loving his time at his grandma's house so much that he begs SpongeBob to go back.
Wow.
But he told SpongeBob that you have to pretend I'm not here for at least 3 months. And SpongeBob, true to his word, is pretending Squidward isn't there. That's a really sweet comic. But it's going to be Grandma Squarepants, and it's going to be the grandmother from the movie The Witches. Let's see, Angron, what would your pick be?
How do you format that way? Because I too have a silly and serious choice. The sillier choice is going to be Alice Green from Big City Greens. Like, there's a lot of cranky old grandmas out there that take the cake when it comes to comedy and also being just, edgy as all heck. And Alice Green is no joke. The voice actress who plays her does a phenomenal job of selling her as both a no-nonsense character, but also one of those who would be she definitely cares for her family, in particular Bill, Cricket, Tilly, and to an extent Gloria, their resident person who's living with them right now. She's not exactly quick to trust. She'd be more quick to pull out a freaking sword, but she's also one of those who isn't completely soulless and isn't completely hardened by all the years she's had. And that makes for some pretty wholesome moments and also makes for some pretty funny moments, not gonna lie. She's both no nonsense and yet just gets into the most nonsensical things more times than not, which is honestly this show in a nutshell. For the serious one, however, that honor goes to Littlefoot's grandmother. Like, there's a lot of reasons this character makes this question work. But the big one is, after Littlefoot's mom died, spoilers, she single-handedly, well, okay, not single-handedly, she had Grandpa as well, but she and Grandpa both took it upon themselves to raise Littlefoot in her absence. At this point, She and him are Littlefoot's only surviving family, minus one, but we'll get to that when we get to that. And in my opinion, that takes some pretty serious work. Also, the fact that compared to most of the other characters, she's pretty somber, wizened, sure, and she definitely is a pretty good maternal figure as well, but she is one of those soft-spoken, somber characters that, compared to most of the other characters in the series, definitely adds a breath of fresh air and just makes it sound so amazing whenever she speaks. It's one of those things you can just sit back to and just be at ease with whenever she speaks. You've gained so much from her. You also just feel a sense of clarity and sanctity with her, and it's honestly one of those things that definitely makes her a pretty worthy candidate for being a pretty serious yet soothing grandma. So yeah, my choices are going to be Alice Green and Littlefoot's grandma.
Those are great choices right there because, again, they both are such well-written characters, and with the second one in particular, we are definitely going to have a lot of fun talking about Land Before Time. Well, not fun, but it's such a great, impactful movie that we're going to have a lot to say about Littlefoot's mother and his grandmother as well, so don't you worry about that. Let's see, Mathwood, your pick, Pete.
Special shout out to some of the OGs like Granny from Looney Tunes, or the first grandma character that I ended up really clicking with, Grandma Gertie from Hey Arnold. But they aren't my favorite for the grandmother character. If we're going to talk about my favorite, we interrupt this program to bring you Courage, the Cowardly Dog Show, starring Courage, the Cowardly Dog, abandoned as a pup. He was found by Muriel, who is my favorite grandma of all time. Muriel is the embodiment of what a grandmother should be. She is loving, she is sweet, she is caring. She is the grandmother we all want. She is the grandma character that just gives everything for Courage and would do anything for him. And that's why Courage protects her as much as he does. She is that just bright spot in what could otherwise be a terrible life. And especially in the background episode for how Courage got found, that was really touching and sweet. And you just see the kind of person Muriel is from that episode alone, let alone all the other ones where she has just been the sole good thing in Courage's life.
Definitely. And especially the episode you brought up in particular, that is one of the iconic episodes. It actually was one of the last episodes for a reason because it wrapped up Courage's entire story and it is just so heart-wrenching. It is a fantastic episode for so many reasons. And yeah, she is an iconic character for so many reasons. Sharkwood, your pick, Pete.
I have to agree with Matt there. Like, Muriel is like the granny classic, you know? Apron, rocking chair, the glasses, the white hair. She has the looks and, and the personality as well. Like, she's very kind. She loves her. Well, in this case, pet, but it's clearly more of a mother and child relationship she has with him. She cooks, she does a lot, the way she speaks, and heck, even the music that sometimes plays when she's on the scene, that classic piano, it gives a grandmotherly feel, and yeah. She's like the perfect motivation for Courage to save and all of that. And even then, she does get her moments, like with Cats, in the Hotel Cats, where it's she who actually saves Courage at the last moment, and heck, Windmill Vandals, it's one of my favorite episodes because it's probably the only episode where she and Eustace actually help Courage defeat the evil spirits and all of that. And also, she also has like her moments, like, yeah, she's kind and all of that. But in the episode with the sand whale where it eats Eustace's mom, it's like, I'm glad everything worked out, but the whale got my ma. I'm glad everything worked out.
That's such a great episode.
Yeah, she is definitely like the grandmother. Like, it's not like a grandmother in a cartoon. She is the grandmother in the cartoons.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Honestly, another option I was thinking about was Link's grandmother in Wind Waker. She also has her own story there. Muriel is probably my favorite one.
I mean, easy to see why, two people answered for her because she is such a great, iconic character. Like I say, she is probably one of the best parts of that show. Really, of any Cartoon Network show, come to think of it.
Nice.
And yeah, overall, I could definitely see why she would be so popular. Now it is time for the patent-pending Dragoness Scale, where we are going to rank Sylvia, and this one is probably going to be one of the most difficult ones I've had yet, and I know it seems like I say that every week, but this time I really do mean it, because this time it's going to be pretty hard, because on one hand, she is such a great written character. The entire concept of her is fantastic. Her voice, her action, the way she moves, the way that she is used to express such a serious emotions as longing and grief. It's all so well done. But at the same time, I cannot give her a 10 out of 10. I really did think about this, but there's something just holding her back. Maybe if we saw her as the full dragoness throughout the entire episode, maybe it would have improved rather than her being in this really kind of weird looking suit of armor that, once again, does not resemble any sort of dragon whatsoever, which is why I actually called her the figure for quite a while, because I did not know that she was supposed to be a dragoness in there for a little while. Yeah, overall, it is kind of just, I guess, biased that, I get it. I get the entire point of the character was to teach grief in that. At the same time, it just feels like I feel like we could have spent a little bit more time with her as a character, knowing more about the way she thinks of things, knowing maybe a tiny bit more about her backstory. But with that being said, she is still a fantastic character. So for me anyway, she is going to get a 9 out of 10. I just could not justify giving her a perfect score, especially after last week with Crush Lulu. She is such a wonderful character, but she's just missing a tiny little piece. With that being said, she still is a fantastic, fantastic character, and I'm not gonna lie, her fate actually made me cry. So good on you for that, beginning after the end. Let's see, Angron, what would your pick be?
I'm gonna go for a 9 out of 10 as well. Like, you rarely get a lot of good, meaningful deaths when it comes to parental figures like Sylvia, and here, thankfully, is one of those instances where it 100% pays off. And while, yeah, the armor definitely was a little distracting, I still found it pretty rad, all things considered. Design aside, I think what really works in Sylvia's favor is her character and what ultimately she represents and does in this episode. And in that regard, it's both unique and ultimately justifies a higher score in my eyes. Like, yeah, the designs are pretty awesome. It helps. They're not fully unique for the armor, which is still pretty rad. There's still enough to bump her up some. The character, her overall demeanor, how she ultimately teaches Arthur/Gray, and how she ultimately prepares him for what this world has to offer, and how kindness can go a long way despite his backstory. I feel that is enough to earn her a 9 out of 10 in my books.
Yep, I understand why. Let's see, Matt, what would you give her?
As seems to be the norm with me, I'm giving an anime character a 10. I think that I would be with you guys for the 9 because of that initial armor design. What saves it is the emotional impact, or Sylvia. And because I have seen the whole series, she stays with Arthur the entire way. She is the driving force for why he becomes the person that he becomes throughout the series. It is her motivation and her drive that gave him a purpose to be a good person that he is trying to become. And if not for that, yeah, she would be a 9 because that armor really did hurt. But between her actual dragon design looking fantastic and just how long standing character has been throughout the whole show, that's what bumps it up and saves her. As was said in this series, that was a very emotional moment and it was impactful. And I'm glad that it wasn't just oh, we're just going to do this for the episode and then, oh, we're going to forget about it. We just wanted to give you an emotional moment for that moment. No, it is something that lasts, and that really helps sell how important this character was and how impactful their lasting moment before they left each other was.
I can definitely understand why, because again, it's one of those things where her character is just so well written and well thought of that she did such a fantastic impact on the show, especially with that element. So I can definitely see why you would give her that score. Let's see, Shark, what would you give her?
I mean, yeah, she's a good character and all of that, and yeah, the whole thing is. The ending is just tragic, like, you can tell she was starting to bond. Even she says so, like, she wanted it to last longer and all of that. And yeah, she's like a good mentor, a mentor figure and grandmother figure as well. There's a lot of good stuff going on here. Fortunately, I kinda do have a problem with, thankfully not with the story, not with her death. I think that was handled pretty well. And her personality and all of that. It's her dragon design, like... Now, I don't want to say it's generic, because it's certainly unique, but honestly, there's just something that doesn't click for me with her design, like... White dragons with Pegasus wings, alright? I see you're trying to do something, but... I don't know, this is just like a me thing, but the design of the dragon doesn't really work well for me. It looks good, it looks fine, but I think I'm gonna be giving the lowest score very little. I'm gonna give her an 8 out of 10, honestly.
Yep, I understand why. So, yeah, overall, still a really high scoring character. She actually kind of got the same score that Laika got from the beginning of the month, which is pretty interesting to note.
Fair enough.
Yep. But that's going to be it for this week. If you have any questions, or if you want to tell us how you would have Sylvia survive if you would do such a thing, feel free to email us at fierydiscourse@outlook.com. Visit us at Twitter at twitter.com/fierydiscourse. Visit us at Blue Sky Fiery Discourse. Be sure to subscribe to the Fiery Discourse YouTube channel and subscribe to the playlist. Like and hit the bell icon. Leave a comment. Any all comments are appreciated. Next week, we are going to be talking about the 2025 My Status as an Assassin Obviously Exceeds the Heroes episode. The Assassin Plays with a Cat to conclude our second ever Isekai Month. But that's not all, because we might also be talking about another episode, but this is where we meet next week. But until then, thank you so much for listening, and take care.
Bye-bye.
Later, y'all.
Adios. See you all next week.